Today we want to talk about rest because at least I've found over these couple of weeks in this Christmas season that we do have a moment to reflect on what is rest with family. Of course, this last Sunday we didn't have a service. We had time at home with our families, and it got me thinking about this idea of rest. As we begin, though, I want to start by actually reading the 10 Commandments. And I want us to notice, or here's a bit of a hint, to not notice what you don't notice. And that didn't make any sense, did it? I'm still waking up, I guess. I'm going to read the 10 Commandments, and I want you to see what is not there. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet. Now, what did you notice? I only read 9 commandments, not 10, so that's a hint. Can anyone shout out what the commandment was that I'm missing? Sabbath, yeah, that's right. Here's the full commandment, actually, and this is from the book of Exodus. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Well, every Friday at roughly 5 p.m., Malora and I gather around our kitchen table in our apartment, and we light a special candle. Now, if you have been over to our apartment, you know that we are candle people. We're always burning a candle in our house. Recently, I was at a Christmas party thing, and there was some prizes given, and there was a bunch of candy, and I picked some candles. And I thought, what has happened to me? You get married for 6 months and you're picking candles over chocolate bars. But this isn't the candle I'm talking about. This is a specially set aside candle. It's a non-scented candle. It's a drip-free candle. And that doesn't really matter. But we light it. And what we do is we pray. And we say, Lord, we want to set aside this time, these next 24 hours. And we want to glorify you in this moment by resting. And that is when we start our Sabbath. Afterwards, we take our phones and we turn them completely off. And that's something that, to be honest, we only do once a week. We don't tend to use that feature very often, but on the Sabbath day, we do. We turn our phone completely off, and we go to the little charging station in our kitchen, and we put our phone there. And then normally we eat supper. We make supper, or we go somewhere to a restaurant. And then normally we come back, and maybe we watch a really good movie, or we read a little bit. And the next day, almost always, we sleep in. We don't have an agenda. Sometimes we go for a walk, not lately, but... Or here's what we do. I just set up my vinyl record player. So we play a record, and we play sometimes the best record of all time, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, right? And at least in my opinion. And I don't know that Malora would agree, but we do sometimes listen to a little bit of vinyl, and we talk, and we aren't on our phones. And honestly, it's become, for me, the best day of my week, other than Sunday. That's a tie, maybe. Today, though, I want us to explore this idea of the forgotten commandments, the commandment that I think sometimes we read over pretty quickly, and I think it's going to teach us some interesting things about ourselves and about God. But I want to begin this morning with an appropriate amount of nuance on this idea of Sabbath. My goal today is not to convince you that Sabbath is a binding commandment. Christians disagree a lot on Sabbath, and they disagree about its place and whether it should still be practiced or not practiced, and whether it's a sin or not a sin to practice it. And that's actually not really what I want us to talk about. Instead, I want us to consider a different question, and that question is it helpful? Is Sabbath a helpful practice? Again, what does it teach us? Because if it is helpful, then why does it matter if it's binding or not? Is it not, if it's genuinely something that is going to make me have a healthier, more spiritually mature, holistic life, then probably it's something that I would want to do either way. But here's what I know about the Ten Commandments. It's that, one, they reveal something about the character of God. They reveal something about God's moral ideal. And if you change the phrasing a little bit on the Ten Commandments, you actually start to get a picture of what eternity will look like. God's new creation will look like a place where you will have no other gods beside Yahweh. Eternity will look like a place where you will not steal, where you will not murder. And no one else will either. And this sounds like a pretty good world to me. So what if Sabbath, as a practice, was actually revealing something about God's nature and about God's ideal world? And maybe to go against the underlying principles of Sabbath is actually to go against the created and intended order of God's creation. For example, is it a sin to stay up every night at 3 a.m. watching Netflix? No, I don't think. I haven't read that anywhere, at least in my reading of the Bible. But is it wise? Of course not. Not killing, not stealing, not lying. These are fairly universal, basic moral truths, and we're thankful that they're there in the Ten Commandments. But Sabbath, I think Sabbath, at least in my experience, is an invitation into deeper spiritual maturity. It's an invitation to a more balanced and healthy life, and it's an opportunity to worship God, most importantly, and often beside friends and family. And honestly, it can be a little bit harder sometimes because no one's forcing you to take a rest, to take a break. People generally are forcing you not to kill someone. We have laws and stuff like that around those things. If you steal a lot or lie a lot, someone's probably going to talk to you eventually. They're going to say, stop doing that, or get out of here, or whatever. But Sabbath, there's no accountability. So it can be actually a little bit harder to, I think, enter into this practice. So where do we begin? Well, I'll begin by saying, I guess, that I am not an expert on Sabbath. This is a new practice to me, and a new practice probably to you as well. In fact, while I've been reading and attempting Sabbath for quite a few years, I would say only recently has it been something where I have found, okay, this is starting to work, and this is actually happening. And it's been off and on for a lot of years. Secondly, though, this is a new concept for us as a church. It's not something that we talk a lot about. And actually, it's not a concept that really a lot of Protestant evangelical churches talk about. It's something that we tend to read over. So, because of this, we must reject all the feelings of shame and guilt that might come along with this topic. And we must extend grace to those around us and to ourselves as well. See, the enemy would like us to become legalistic about Sabbath. He would like us to turn the practice of Sabbath into one of rigid rules and make us feel really bad when we don't live up to these rules. But we have to reject this. Instead, think of Sabbath as an invitation to become more like Jesus, to become more like our Creator, to enter into the rhythms that we were designed to operate within. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we should also define Sabbath a little bit more. If you just do a quick Google search of Sabbath, this is what it would say. It would say Sabbath is a day of religious observance and abstinence from work, kept by Jewish people from Friday evening to Saturday night, and by most Christians on Sunday. What you'll notice, though, in both of these definitions is that Sabbath is a 24-hour period of rest. That's what's common in this definition. Now, when the Ten Commandments were given, Sabbath was from Friday night to Saturday night. So actually our friends down the road, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, if you ever have noticed them as you made your way here, they're actually right. Like, Sabbath is when they gather and hold church. It was Christians thousands of years later who slowly changed the Sabbath day to Sunday. On March 7th, in 321 AD, Emperor Constantine declared Sunday as a day of rest, which also happened to be the day that Christians gathered. And there we go. Sabbath slowly became Sunday, not Saturday. But since then, lots has changed. And the truth is, for the follower of Jesus, the day does not matter. The day of Sabbath does not matter. I Sabbath from Friday to Saturday, but it's only because I work on Sunday. And for you, maybe you have Wednesdays off or Tuesdays off, or for most people, I think, and you will hear as you read about Sabbath, is actually Sundays do work for most people because you go to church and you have the day off. Sabbath, in short, is about two things. It's about rest and it's about worship. It's a recharging of our spiritual batteries, and even our mental, physical, and emotional ones as well. It's a bold act of resistance against our culture of hustle, busyness, consumerism, and work. See, Sabbath counters a culture of nonstop work with stopping. Sabbath counters a culture of materialism with gratitude and with putting away the credit card for just a day. Sabbath counters a culture that forgets God with a day that remembers Him. Sabbath counters a culture that is rarely present thanks to so much digital distraction with a day that is present with the people around you and alone totally with God, or actually at a table with other people. With all this said, I just want to answer two questions with the remaining time that we have this morning. And this is such a big topic. I wish that I had more time to talk about it. I found myself, honestly, more than probably anything I've preached on, wanting to put more in and just not being able to. So we're just going to go from a really big picture view here this morning. And we're going to answer the questions, why do we Sabbath and how can we Sabbath? So why do we follow these rhythms of rest? We follow them because God Himself rests. Let's take a look back at that commandment in Exodus. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. But He rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. I don't know about you, but this passage, this reasoning behind why we need to rest, puts a lot of my excuses about not resting to shame. God managed to create all of existence, the earth, the stars, humanity, everything we see today, and even He had time to rest. God Himself actually Sabbathed. So when I fail to rest because I'm up late writing a paper, or when I work every day of the week because work is crazy, or when I make excuses to justify my workaholism, or when I let the office consume my mind 7 days a week, or when I choose business over family or constant sports practices over my spiritual life. In all these moments, it's pretty humbling to acknowledge that, while I don't have enough time to rest, God, the creator of all things, the one holding up the fabric of the universe, does. The first reason I Sabbath is because God does. If it's important for God to rest, if God can find time to rest, so can I. But the second reason, and I would say one of the most important reasons, is that it's also about control. This practice is about seeing God as sovereign and seeing my work as good, but not as the thing that's holding up the entire universe. My work isn't holding the world together. There's this famous saying as you, if you dive deeper into this practice of Sabbath, and I don't actually know who said it, but it goes like this. I mean, some people say, the devil doesn't sleep. He's always at work, so I have to be too. And the response to that is, since when is the devil a good role model? Why do we want to be like the devil? God rests. I can take 24 hours off of my work because I'm actually not the one holding things together. I'm actually just not that important. When I'm sleeping, God hasn't stopped working. When I stop working, God hasn't stopped working. When I take 24 hours off, the office doesn't just explode. Sabbath helps us to put more trust in others, but it also helps us to put more trust in God. Finally, Sabbath is a type of training. See, I can try really hard to be a more relaxed person. I can try really hard to have healthy work rhythms. I can try really hard to believe that God is the one in control, but I can only try so hard. And my trying can only do so much. Sabbath, though, in my experience, has been a training ground. It's a time to allow the Spirit to do a work in me. When I come to work on Sunday and when I work all the way to Thursday, I feel a difference. I come into the week more centered. I end the week more focused and with a clear finish line. I don't extend that finish line into my time of rest. One of the things I appreciate about a Sabbath-type practice is that it gives a clear finish line. I've done work at this time. And I light a candle, and I better not take out the laptop after I light that candle. One author said this: Sabbath is not simply the pause that refreshes, it's the pause that transforms. Sabbath, though only one day, helps you to live the rest of your life, the rest of your week differently. Though it's one day, it helps you to live the rest of your week differently. As we wrap up, though, the second question is how? How do I Sabbath? Probably most of us are thinking that is just completely unrealistic. To take 24 hours to do absolutely nothing. For a lot of us, of course, our days off are days to do chores or to catch up on things. So I want to say I hear you in that. And I think our first step into answering this invitation to Sabbath is to just lower your expectations. Start by just completely lowering your expectations. I know I just spent 20 minutes talking about how beautiful and wonderful Sabbath is, but actually maybe take a moment and say, okay, that's a beautiful picture, Aidan. Thank you. But I'm probably not going to do that in a week. I mean, for example, I don't have kids, and a Sabbath day with children, I'm just guessing, is going to be a lot different than one without. I have my nice vinyl record and our whatever, and probably with kids, there's a little more crying on your Sabbath than mine. There's probably a few more tantrums, and that's okay. Actually, that's actually really beautiful. There's some people, and by some people I mean me, who can, if something isn't perfect, they just throw it away. They start a spiritual discipline, and if it just doesn't go exactly the way you want it to, then you stop. Or if you start a habit and you mess up, then it's pointless and you're done. But this can't be our approach to Sabbath. When I first started Sabbath, I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted it to be a time where things just went exactly the way I had planned them. And when I first started to practice Sabbath, as a married couple especially, there were arguments. But with time, there were less. The first step to starting a Sabbath rhythm is to dramatically lower your expectations. Don't start where you want to be, start where you actually are. And slowly, with time, introduce new things. For example, if you've never taken a 24-hour Sabbath in your life, then don't start with 24 hours, unless you really think you can. Start with something a lot smaller than that. Start with 1, 2, or 3 hours. Maybe you start with a Sabbath dinner. On Sundays, you have a lunch or a supper, and you take some time to maybe read a prayer and put your phone away and eat with family. That's a wonderful start to a Sabbath rhythm. And then maybe with time, you make it 3 hours to 4 hours, and then maybe half a day. And maybe eventually you get to a whole 24-hour Sabbath. But don't start with some big, wonderful, idealistic expectation on Sabbath. Start with what's going to happen. The other thing, I think, is that in my experience, Christians who say that they're in a season where they're just too busy to take a break, they're just too busy to rest, never actually rest. They never actually get around to practicing a habit of rest. If you don't start, if you keep waiting until school is done, until this busy season is done, until things finally settle down, then probably you just aren't going to start. And that's so true of many things. We say, well, when this happens, I'll do that thing. And from my experience as well, when I find it most challenging to hold a Sabbath, to keep a Sabbath, it's often the times that I really need it the most. The times that I've most needed a practice of rest where I'm centered around God, put away the television, put away the phone, are almost always the times that I find it really hard. I find it really hard to do, and actually I need it most. The irony is that it takes work to rest, and you have to plan ahead a little bit. You have to say no to more things. You have to work hard. But when you set aside the time, when you light the candle or whatever you might do to start your Sabbath day, it becomes one of your best days of the week. It becomes the day you look forward to the most. I'll invite the band up as we end. As we close, I want to read a list of some ideas of maybe what you could do with Sabbath. And these are suggestions, not rules. And I hope you hear everything I said today in that light, that these are suggestions, invitations, not rules that you need to feel bad about. I would feel really bad if you all walked out of here and said, man, that Aidan just really is some legalist who wants me to spend 24 hours a day following rules and having a terrible time. That's not what I want you to hear. What I want you to hear is that this is an invitation to take some time to focus on God and, in a sense, throw a bit of a party. That's really what Sabbath is. It's something that you observe, like Christmas. Christmas is a great example of what Sabbath can kind of look like. As you prepare, you make some things. It takes some work to have Christmas. But then when you're experiencing Christmas, it's a time of hopefully of rest and of family and of good things. And I believe that that's what Sabbath can really look like. So as we close, here's a list from Practicing the Way. Now, I know there's some small groups that are going through this practice of practicing the way. And if this piques your interest, then definitely join one of those small groups or send me an email or whatever. And I definitely would be happy to send you some resources. But this list comes from Practicing the Way. And these are 12 activities that traditionally have marked the Sabbath and might be, again, not rules, but suggestions, guidelines, good ideas for what you might want to do on a time of Sabbath, whether that's 3 hours or 24. It says lighting candles is one, blessing the children, eating a meal, singing, worshiping with your community, walking, napping, if you're married, making love, reading, spending time alone with God, spending time with family and friends, and gratitude. Things you might want to stay away from on the Sabbath could be shopping, smartphones, social media, television. But like I said, there are no rules, just some best practices. Often, Melora and I choose a really good movie to watch. Sometimes I make food because for me that doesn't feel like something that's work. Maybe if that does feel like work for you, then you don't want to do that. But most importantly, Sabbath is a time to put yourself in kind of the proper place, to say that when I pause, God is still at work. It's a time to remember, a time to pray, maybe spend some time in Scripture. All in all, Christ allows us to rest and delight in Him. And Sabbath is an expression of this, and a way to practice this. It's one example of how we can express this gratitude to God and this acknowledgement that He is the one holding things together. It's a day to be grateful for God and all the good things He has given us. It's a day to focus on what matters most. It's a day to celebrate, to have fun, to be with family. It's a break, it's a rest, it's a pause. It's a time of worship. I'll invite the hospitality team to come forward as we go into the Lord's Supper, as is our habit the first of the month. And as I think about our topic today of rest, and as I think about the work that Jesus did for us on the cross, the words, "It is finished," come to mind. We can rest because we are not earning anything. We are not earning salvation. We are not earning favor with God. It is finished, and we are invited to work out. We are invited to work in our response to this, but we're also invited to rest in response to this. As we pass the plates, hear this invitation from Jesus. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light."